Yo, what's going on, guys? Reversal here, and today I'm going to be doing another discussion video for Dinos. This time talking about all the different cards that you'll see in the deck occasionally and whether I think they're good or not. This is basically referring to like the extra engines and some staple cards and extra deck cards. Some of them, mostly like the extra deck ones, will be like a few obvious ones, but as far as the main deck goes, I'm not gonna go over like Oviraptor and Babies, Misk, like Conductor, etc. I don't see any point in talking about those because obviously those are good and they're necessary to play the deck. So this is gonna be like the other options that are sometimes good, sometimes janky. I'll talk about all of them. If I missed anything, if there's anything you want to ask about, feel free to ask in the comments. I'm sure I missed something, but there's a bunch of cards in front of me, so I'll talk about all of them. Before I get started, if you haven't already, drop a sub. I would appreciate that. I'm trying to get to 1,000 since you need that to be monetized. I don't do this to make any money, obviously, but making a couple bucks on the side just for doing something I enjoy doing would be cool. So without further ado, just get straight into it. We'll start off with everyone's favorite package, these scraps. If you know me, you already should know what I'm about to say, but if you don't, I think these cards are terrible. I think they don't belong in the deck at all, unless you are going all in on the FTK strategy with like Bish Balkan. In that case, go for it. Since like with that build, you're basically just building your deck to go first. Because like once you're putting these cards in your deck and like the other extenders type things to make sure you can FTK as much as possible, you have no room for non-engine, so your deck's just inherently bad going second, unless you can like cheese out a win with Misk or something. But yeah, I don't recommend that build, even though you can win games with it, but I don't like it. And then that extends to Savage, the Granite package for Nat Beast, through the Amaterasu in there. If you know, you know, but you shouldn't be playing this card. So yeah, I think like the scraps, if you're using them to make like any of these, it's just not worth it at all. If you're gonna put these bricky cards in your deck, you better be doing an FTK with it, because otherwise they're just not worth it at all. Because like a lot of people just like will put 2 of these at least, sometimes 3 plus this, just to add a Savage to the end board, and that's just not worth it in the slightest. So yeah, I could talk about how much I hate these cards all day, but I'll leave it at that. Don't put these cards in your deck. They're bricky and they're not very good. Second package, another favorite of the people, Litho and Diagram. Litho is a weird card. I'm not a big fan of this card myself. I think Diagram's okay, since all you need is 1 baby and you're good. Litho, you need at least a baby and another monster to pop, and if that second monster isn't another baby, it tends to lose a lot of its value, but it technically still works as long as you have 1 baby and another monster. But I'm not a huge fan of this card. I think Ground Xeno is just a better version of Diagram. Like that package is just a better version of this. So I thought this was like a decent option as like a budget alternative when Prosperity was expensive, just because like it's technically an extender. It's not like a great extender, since you do need to have a good enough hand to use it, but well, at least with the Litho, like the Diagram, you just need a baby. But it's just more ways to combo like with Diagram baby if you have this in the deck, and then in turn like set rotations another option if you do play this package. Since Lost World's another field spell, you could set either or to your opponent's field and then 1 to yours. And this can turn off cards like Imperm and stuff like that, which is decent, but I don't really think this package is worth playing. Again, similar to the scraps to a degree in that the Litho can be very bricky. These are taken away from your non-engine spots, so you're just gonna not have a ton of good cards for going second if you put these cards in the deck. So I don't think they're worth playing, but these are less terrible than the scraps just because this is like a decent extender and a combo piece. But I feel like the Litho combos are kind of awkward too. If you're doing, like if you're playing the FTK build, I would play these just because you're going all in for going first with that build, but same thing as the scraps. Otherwise, if you're not playing the FTK build, I don't see a point playing those cards really. Next, we have Instant Fusion, and then the typical Millenniumized target, and then the other funny target is the Time Wizard. I don't think Instant Fusion's bad, because Millenniumized can help against Ash, it can help against Droll, Evolur, etc. It's pretty good to help against hand traps, and then when you're going second, this card is not terrible if going second either, but if you have space, the Time Wizard's really funny since it can act as like a Darkhole pretty much, and then going first, sometimes you can Instant Fusion for this to combo with like Lost World and Baby, or two babies, which is really funny. But overall, even though this is a good card, I think, in the deck, I think the extra deck space is a little tight nowadays, depending on what you're running, but I feel like this is a good card, but I don't think it's worth it at the moment. But it's not a bad choice either if you do choose to play it. I don't think there's room to play both the targets with some of the newer cards that have came out recently, but it's not a bad card. But next up, another main deck package is the Banshee package for the Shatos. I'm not gonna really talk about this much. I made a full video going over this combo and what I feel about it last video, but I think this stuff's pretty cool. I think it's more of a side deck thing though, and it does take up the 2 extra deck space, plus a third one for another link 4 to use all the extra bodies. So I don't think this package is bad, but I think it's more of a side thing in a board breaker heavy format more than anything, because this deck can be weak to stuff like Dark Ruler, and this just ignores it. So like I said, if you want to see a more in-depth thing about this package, watch my last video. Now we got the Doodle package. These cards are terrible, unfortunately. There was like a very niche application these had when Tier Limit was like full power. Like this getting milled was kind of funny because you could use it to search UCT and just hard summon it, and that was pretty powerful. But and then the Tyranno was funny against Flu, but other than like that, these cards are just not very good. The Stego could be good someday, maybe, I don't know. The level 5 is kind of awkward. It doesn't really help you do anything. If it was a different level, maybe it would be more useful, but all it can really do nowadays, I think, is if you get hand trapped, you can special this and make like an SP or something. So I don't think this is worth, any of these are worth playing at all. Another main deck package is the Mathmech engine. These 4. This was a build at one point that is on the channel if you're interested in looking at it, but I don't think this stuff's worth playing right now. Maybe someday it'll be worth playing again, but since Circular went to 1, it got a little worse, and then just the format's just not great for it in general, because the main thing this was good for was when Circular was at 3. It was you just got to see this card a lot more, and it would help you extend and play through hand traps and get to at least the super factorial and whatever else you could get to. But now Circulars only have 1, so it's a little awkward. Seeing the Sigma in hand, it can help you extend sometimes too, but it got a lot worse when this card went to 1. So I don't think this is worth playing. I think it's still something you can do, but the main thing was the super factorial was nice for if you got hit with Darkhole, you would still have this, which is like several disruptions on its own. So I think the Ashatos package is better. Just as like a couple cards you can play around stuff like Darkhole. The last like engine is the Evolur, like with the Snake Eyes, the Bellstar stuff. I haven't used this a ton. I've just kind of like looked at it a little bit. It topped like a regional recently, which is like I think the only showing that it's really had. I don't think the package is bad or like really good. I think it's just like fine. I think it cuts into your non-engine space a lot. And the wanted package and stuff is super expensive, so that it would need to be like broken in this deck to justify spending that much on it, and I just don't think it's broken in this deck. I think it's just something you can play if you want to, but I don't know if it's the best way to play the deck. If I had to guess, probably not. Maybe when the next core set comes out with the Populous or the whatever that Snake Eyes card's called, maybe that'll get better. I haven't really looked too far ahead into that, but as far as this engine is concerned right now, I think it's okay, but I'm not fully convinced that it's worth playing or not. And I don't really think I'm ever gonna buy those cards since it's like over $200 for that package, and spent enough money on this deck already. So it would have to really like show me something in order to want to do that. There's a couple of the other new cards and one old one. We'll talk about this one first, the Overtex. I think this card, like its effect is good with the negating a spell or whatever and searching the pill when it goes to the grave. I think that part of the card is good, but the part of the card that's bad is its summoning condition. This card is a brick every time you draw it. Like, you're not summoning this card, so that's its biggest drawback. I don't think it's worth putting in the deck because of how bad of a brick it is. When you already have Conductor, you already have Pank, you already have Pill Target. So although I do think this card, if it was a little easier to summon and wasn't as much of a brick, it would be pretty good, but it's not, so I don't think this card's very good and I wouldn't recommend playing it. The Transcendosaur Meteorus, I think this card is awful. I've seen some people use like 3 of this with like multiple of the Xeno Meteorus and then like 6 babies. Even then, I think this card is just ass. The math on even this card being live, like you have to have babies in your hand on your opponent's turn. So if you don't open this with like 2 babies, this card's like useless pretty much. So there's really no reason to play this at all. The double-headed Dino King Rex. This card's like not terrible, mainly because it's a level 6, and it can help get your like Lost World token before you start like actually playing. So I don't think it's like horrible because of like SP being in the format, but I wouldn't play this card at the same time because I don't think it's useful enough to really warrant playing. This card could have had a lot more potential if they just made it a little bit better, but they kind of just did the bare minimum with this card. So I don't think it's good enough, sadly. Then we got the new pill, the beta pill. I don't really see any reason to play this card at all. It's just a worse version of the pill that we already have. That one gets to banish from the grave in hand, which is usually from the grave, so you're not really using more resources. This one, first of all, it doesn't even destroy, it tributes, and you have to use stuff from your hand and field, so you're using your actual resources and not stuff that you already use. So unless this card can be used in like a FTK or something, I think this card is just garbage. Next, Pank. Obviously we should be playing Pank in the main or side, but I figured I'll throw it in here just because some people might consider siding it instead of maining it, since it's not good to draw going first. I think you have to play this card whether you're going first or second. It just has too much utility. You can summon it off pill. It's an out to like skill drain, which you don't really have a good one otherwise for the most part. So yeah, if you're building to go first or second, I would include pink. Doggerin. Unlike pink, I think if you're building to go first, I would not play this card unless it's like broken in the format, which right now it's not. It's just decent. There's only one other instance I would play this card in the main deck for a going first build, and that's if you're on Small World. But yeah, other than that, it's just kaijus are kaijus. They're pretty good, and this one's a dinosaur. You can technically search it with Ovi if you have enough gas in your hand to still combo afterwards. And if you have Lost World and you start with this to give them, you trade one of their disruptions and you give them a token to turn off any targeting stuff. So it's pretty nice when you draw with Lost World, especially. Giant Rex, I've seen some people consider cutting this card. I don't think this card is really cuttable, unfortunately. It is less relevant in a lot of combos now, since you're really just using it as a level 4 body. You're not even banishing it and summoning it back on your turn a lot of the times nowadays. But sometimes you do need to do that, and for those times you definitely want it in the deck. And then follow-up plays sometimes when you're like, when you have this in the grave, you get to banish it with pill or UCT or whatever, can come back and help you do more link plays, or maybe get to a rank 4 in your follow-up turn. So I still think you have to play Rex, even though it is kind of unfortunate to draw a lot of the time, but it is what it is. Lost World, I think this card's crazy. And a lot of people don't play 3 or even play down like 1 or not at all. I feel like this card just does so much for the deck, and I like playing it at 3. It turns off targeting stuff as long as they have the token. Just the only downside to this, I think, is giving your opponent the token while SP's a card can be a little weird depending on what their extra deck is, but I think the pros outweigh the cons with this card by a lot. It helps you combo whether you're going first or second, because sometimes you just need to beat over the Lost World token and going second to get your plays rolling if all you have is like Lost World and like a normal summonable Dino. So it can help for that. It can help you play through hand traps. It can help you play through other disruptions. This card is just great. I wouldn't play less than 3 personally. Now we got the Xeno package, which the bare minimum would be the ground Xenos and then the Meteorus. Before Duelist Nexus came out, I was not running a vanilla with these cards, and I thought they were still like okay, just because the ground Xeno is a good it's an extender, it's a combo piece, so it helped a lot. It's like I said before, it's a better version of Diagram pretty much. The Meteorus, especially when you start with this card in a baby, being able to just summon Synchro Deck with this and then just go straight into a Baron and then like use the Misk to banish and then pop the baby with the Baron. It's really nice to have that safe line of play as long as this doesn't get Ash. So I feel like this cards are good in the deck. I don't love them going second because I feel like they're awkward to start with and you don't want to clog in them either. So going second, I always side down to 2 of these. But yeah, and then the last thing is vanilla. I feel like the 6 is the only one worth playing. I don't see much of a reason to play the level 4 vanilla, unless there's something specific you're trying to do. But I'd like the 6 specifically because Lars is such a good card, and having this in the deck helps a lot, into Droll especially. So I feel like this package is needed, even though this card is like kind of a brick. It's like okay to draw sometimes, but you have to like be playing at least to some degree to use it. And then the vanilla, you obviously don't like drawing this shit, but it is what it is. I think these cards are too good in the deck not to use, mainly to help play through hand traps and try background is just another consistency piece, which the deck does need. A few more staples. We got Prosperity. I don't need to say much about this card. I don't think this card's going to be a 3 very long, but this card's crazy in the deck. You get to banish 6 every time, then just search for what you need. It's broken. The half damage doesn't really matter going second, because you can clear their board with Conductor and set up enough so they can't play in the following turn. And sometimes, if they have like a few monsters or you give them a Lost World token or whatever, you can still OTK through this if you disrespect Nib. So another consistency card is Small World. I don't love this card. I don't hate this card. I think it's like a decent option. In addition to Prosperity, I would never play this card over Prosperity. But if you wanted to play like 3 Prosperity and then a couple Small Worlds, it's not the worst thing in the world. But I don't like that this card's conditional on having an extra monster to get rid of that works to search what you need, which usually isn't a problem with that aspect, but I'm just not a big fan of this card. It's not terrible though. It's just another consistency card. And then going second, if your hand's like crazy, you can use it to search like Doggerin or Pink. But again, similar to the first point, like your hand, I don't like that your hand has to like be able to support using this card, because you do go -1 just to activate this, which isn't great in general, because this deck does not do well with card advantage for the most part. So you don't really want to be ditching cards just for a chance to play the game. But I don't think this card's awful, because it can get you to Misk more often, and getting to Misk is good. So it's not a bad card. It's not a good card. If you want to play it, go for it. But I don't really like playing it personally. If you do play it, you'd have to go higher deck count for sure. So Terraforming. If you play the diagram stuff, you probably want to be playing this. If not, I don't think it's necessary. I think it was fine when Prosperity was an expensive card if you couldn't afford it or whatever, but now I just think it's unnecessary. I think 3 Lost World is plenty. I don't feel like I need to see Lost World more to put this card in the deck to take away a non-engine slot to play more into Droll. I just don't think it's needed. Call by. I personally like siding this a lot of the time just because I value having other non-engine in my main deck that's good going first and second. But you could definitely main deck this or side it, but I think you do have to play it somewhere, because this deck can sometimes just lose to an Ash or a Droll. So you do have to play it somewhere, but I don't think it's mandatory in the main deck, but you do have to play it somewhere. 1 for 1. I don't like this card because you need to discard a monster as cost to activate it. It only works with Baby, so I just don't like this card at all. The only build I could see it being useful in is the FDK build. If you're maxing out on like babies and playing Lithos and shit, you'll have extra stuff to discard, and all you care about is doing the FTK that turn, so this card's a little better in that, but otherwise I wouldn't recommend playing this card. Foolish Burial, some people think this is good because it can send Misk. It's not terrible, but again, it only combos with Baby for the most part. You're giving up the Misk protection when you do send it like this, so your plays are extremely vulnerable, and I don't think this card does much for the deck at all to warrant playing. It's not the worst card in the world, but it's not good enough to play, in my opinion. Crossout. This is like a weird one. If you're already playing all the hand traps, I don't think this card's terrible to side to help you play through those hand traps. But it's a weird card to justify in a 2-card combo deck, since you have to open a little better than you would like to. compared to like decks that typically use this, which are like 1-card combo decks. But it still works. It's just a little hit or miss. Like if you happen to draw this and you don't have combo, drawing this card sucks, but you can still get a little use out of it sometimes, depending on what else is in your main deck. But I think this is a fine card to side for going first if you are already playing all the hand traps. But I think this card is not that good in the deck, but it's not terrible either. Now some going second cards. That's the only hand trap I'm going to talk about. The Gamma package. I think if Gamma was at 3, this deck would be a lot better right now. With Ground Xeno especially, because like Ground Xeno says you have to ash this card. Like if you play the deck like I've shown how to do with like the Misk and the Baron to start. It says you have to ash this or your hand traps doesn't matter. And then like other cards, like you have to draw here or your draw doesn't matter. This card basically answers that and would make this deck way better in the hand traps. But since it's at 1, it's very hard to justify this card. I've tried it. Drawing this card feels way worse when this card is only at 1, so you're not getting the payoff as much. The vanilla and the driver, since it's a normal, it can be somewhat useful to draw sometimes if you're playing the Transcendosaurus fusion, because you can use Ground Xeno to fusion this off, but that scenario was way too niche and didn't really come up, so I don't think this package is worth playing anymore, unfortunately. But it's not as bad as you would think, even though Gamma's at 1. So if this card happens to go to 2 on the next list, maybe I would definitely play it at 2, I think, because it was at 2 in Master Duel. I was playing it at 2 in that when I was playing it, and it was pretty good still. So so some other going second cards. Fenrare. This is also a going first card. I think Fenrare is great in this deck personally. I think just adding another copy of itself is really helpful. Don't play into Doodle obviously when you don't have to, so just wait to use a search unless you're trying to bait out like an Imperm or something. But I think with Kashtira not really being a deck anymore, people don't really hand trap this when you're going first at least. Going second, people will use their Imperms or Veilers and stuff on it because you could they're gonna have to use it eventually when you go to battle phase, so they might as well cut you off a search. But I think this card's nice in the deck. Just being able to get that extra one for the next turn can really help if your board gets broken or whatever. And then this card just applies so much pressure every single turn, and Dinos can definitely either break or lose to one hand trap. So if you could slap this on the field and you have like some hand traps to back it up, that can definitely carry you to games when your Dino cards let you down. And that's happened so many times to count at this point. And this card can technically also help you combo sometimes with Lost World and one of the Link 2s that pops. But that doesn't happen a ton, but it is something that can happen occasionally. But yeah, I love Fenrare in this deck. I think it's one of the better cards in the format right now because of SP as well. So I would recommend playing it personally. Thrust. I think if you're building to go first, this card is not good. I think if you're building to blind second, which I can't understand why anyone would want to do that right now in this format, but if you do, this card is okay. I think last format, this card was mandatory if you were going second. But this format, I feel like it's more of a side card, since some of these decks you really need hand traps to stop them, because unless you draw like a crazy amount of board breakers, you're not going through their boards. So yeah, I don't think this card is that good going second in the current format, but I definitely still like to side it at minimum. And if I was playing a blind second deck, maybe I would main it, but I wouldn't play a blind second deck right now regardless, so I don't think that's really worth talking about. The other Tactics cards, Talents. It's a really interesting card in this deck. I think this card as a going second card right now isn't great. Since it's not that good against a few of the top decks. And then you do need to do something to turn this card on. And the Dino engine doesn't bait interaction that great a lot of the time. Just depends on your hand. Like, you can, but if you have like a weak engine hand, you really need your non-engine to carry you so you could start playing. And this card isn't going to do that for you. I feel like this card in general is a better going first card than a going second card right now. And I feel like this card in this deck going first isn't that great, but it's not terrible either. I think the math behind this card, and like whether you have to see this with your combo and then have an additional combo piece that works to play through a hand trap to really get full value out of this card. Because when you're going first, you want to be using this card to hand rip, because that's the most broken effect on the card. So for that to happen, you'd have to have a 3-card Dino combo plus this card. And they would have to have like an Ash for it. So that's basically asking your deck to give you a 4-card combo for this card to be at its full potential, and that's just not realistic at all. If you have a 2-card combo and you get Ashed or whatever, and you use this to draw 2, the odds of you drawing what you need aren't really that good, but you obviously can if you're lucky enough, or you could just draw into more non-engine. So I don't think it's a terrible card going first. I just feel like it's too inconsistent to really want to play it in this deck, but I don't think it's a bad choice. I just prefer cards that are always gonna do what they're supposed to do, and this card doesn't always do that. So I've tried it a lot in this deck. I main decked it pretty much all last format. I've tried it this format, and sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's just flat out awful. So I feel like I'd rather just play cards I can rely on consistently, and this isn't one of those cards. But you can definitely play it, and it's not that bad. Droplet. I don't like Droplet in this deck, really, unless there's a format where like you absolutely have to be playing Droplet for whatever reason. The main reason cards like this aren't that good is the cost. Like, it's too steep in this deck because you need all your cards. It's typically like you could activate like a spell and then send that and one other thing at most usually, and you still need a pretty good hand to do that. So I've played it in the past sometimes and it's been like okay, but for the most part, like, the format would really need to like demand you to play that card to justify playing it. And then same goes for Super Poly, except this card requires extra deck space, which this card would have to be crazy in the format to justify that extra deck space. Right now, I think it's a decent card, but I don't think it's good enough to justify the extra deck space to go with the -1 that it brings you. Because yeah, like I said, you don't want to be discarding your cards in this deck. But if this card was crazy enough in a format, I could definitely see us playing it, but right now I don't think it's worth it. Darkhole is another card that I think is nice in Dinos, since it's just a board right in general. But in this deck, it can help you combo with the babies in Lost World, so it's pretty decent for that. I don't think this card's that great right now, though. And then in turn, the Kaiju Slumber, I see people talk about this sometimes. This card's just worse Darkhole. Like, I would never play this card in this deck, because Darkhole exists, you just play that instead. But right now, I wouldn't be on this card, personally. The last board breaker is Evenly. I'm not a huge fan of Evenly in this deck, because you do have to use your battle phase to combo sometimes. And that's definitely not something that you want to give up. Similar to the Super Poly and the Droplet, this card would have to just be crazy in a format for me to want to use it. And again, this card's not that good right now, so I wouldn't recommend playing this in your Dino deck either. Now for some extra deck cards. We got a few XCs. Lagia, Dolka, obviously these cards are great, play them. Dweller. This card's very nice to have as an option. There's formats where you can take it out of the extra deck, but I wouldn't recommend doing that right now. Dugaris. This card's nice for OTKs. Giving Conductor double the attack, and it can attack everything. It's really nice. Baguska. This card is like okay if Shifter is prevalent more than anything. Just because you can like send Rex and it gets banished, comes back, you could just make this and pray. But I think with SP being a card in everyone's extra deck, I think this card's not very good anymore. I wouldn't recommend playing it. Tornado Dragon. This is a decent extra deck monster for back row removal. If you have the space for it, it's not terrible. I prefer Nightmare Phoenix personally, but this card's not bad either. Lars, this the best rank 6. This card's crazy. I think this card helped this deck so much, and I would definitely recommend playing it. The other rank 6, Solda. This was used sometimes before Lars was out. I didn't think the vanilla was worth playing just for this card before Lars came out, but now that Lars is out, there's no reason to play this card at all. The Drill, whatever the fuck it's called. This card is a rank 6 that can put Misk from the banish. It can summon it back, so it gets a back rotation. This card's like not awful, but in practice, you would just never make this card really. It's just not good enough, sadly. And then we got the Sky Crisis and the Zeus. I think Typhon is mandatory in pretty much every deck. This card's just crazy. It does, like, this card can just win you games that you don't deserve to win sometimes. And especially a deck like this that doesn't grind well, being able to slap this on any monster is really nice. So definitely would play this. And then Zeus, unless you're on the stuff like Talents or Change of Heart, I don't think Zeus is needed in this deck. You don't like hard make it very often through like your actual engine. It's usually just when you take an XEs and make something, or make this over theirs, but even then, this card is really not that necessary to play. It doesn't come up nearly as often as you'd want it to for what card's place it would be taking, because there's a lot less space now than before with like the Sky Crisis and stuff. We got a few synchros. Baron's obviously great with the Dino stuff. Cheng-Ying, you can make this with the Xeno stuff. It's not a bad card. I just don't think it's like good enough to warrant the space in the extra deck. But it's definitely not bad. I think there's better cards to play, and that's it. But Cheng-Ying's cool. The Glaciosaurus, this card's terrible. There's no reason to play this card whatsoever unless you're doing some Crimson Dragon shenanigans. Which I don't think any of that stuff's particularly good, but that's the only reason to ever consider even using this card. Otherwise, it's just an awful card. Last synchro is Denglong. I don't think this card's good in the deck either. You have to play another brick in the pillars, and I just don't think it's good enough, because this usually means you're playing scraps on top of it, so you just don't want to be doing that. You can use the Tomazaurus as your vanilla to make this, and then you can make Chaofeng, but I don't think that's worth it either. You're making your draw lines worse because you don't have the level 6. I think Lars is just a better card than this. The only thing is like Dark Ruler and stuff, but that boils down to the fact that if I'm going to be playing this, I'd rather just throw the Ashatos package in, since that's better into the board breakers anyway. Then we got the one fusion, the Gigantosaur. I don't think this is an inherently bad card, but I just don't think it's worth it, because usually making this card means that you have to give up making Lars, because you have to use the vanilla to make this. And I just don't think that's ever worth it, really, like at all. Maybe when the Hornsaurus comes out, maybe this card will be more useful, but for now, it barely would ever come up if you had it in the extra deck, my opinion. I think it's just not worth playing right now. We got a bunch of links. The normal ones, Link Rebo, Security CDs in every Dino deck, they're mandatory. Anima. This card's really nice if you have the space for it, but typically the space is a little too tight to justify playing this. But if you do, this card's really nice, especially if you have an SP, because you could like go into this, suck something, and then make a SP and hit some more stuff. So this card's nice if you have space, but probably don't have space for it. Pentastag, it's helps you OTK. Cross Sheep, only included this because some people would play it with the fusion, usually in builds that would play like scraps in the fusion and stuff. So this card does not, don't play this shit, please. It's terrible. You don't need it. Some more Link 2s. We got the Donner. Then I'll throw Cerberus here too, since these serve the same purpose. This is what can be helpful with Fenrare to combo with Lost World sometimes. This one, you have to discard a card to use. This one, you have to give up the Link 2 body. I don't know which one's better. I'd probably just play the for hire, because discarding cards kind of annoying, so. But having one or the other is nice if you do play Fenrare. Phoenix, another good Link 2, like I said. If you have space, you could play this or Tornado Dragon just to have like something to clear back row. I like this one though, since you could just pop something, then just keep link climbing with it to go into like access code or whatever, and unicorn, stuff like that. So yeah, I'd play this over the Tornado personally. The G Golems, if you're not familiar with these, I have videos showing what these do. These help you link climb into access code very easily. I still think they're very good for that. They don't really come up going first anymore, which this was like a cool thing you could do going first before Lars came out, to get like a nicer board without any more bricks in your deck. But since that doesn't come out anymore, it's really just to make access code. And it's mostly in main phase 2, like if you need to use your Lost World token in battle phase to combo. Being able to like go access code, rank 4 conductor, and then just popping all their leftover stuff with access code is really nice. But even that doesn't come up that much anymore. I feel like for the first time in months, these cards are cuttable if you do have better cards to play. But I think if you're not playing the Shatos package, I think these should probably still be in the extra deck. But if you are playing that, there's not really room for these anymore. But I do think this package is very good. Going second still. IP, you don't need to play IP in this deck. It'll never come up. Since you can't use links to make this, it loses so much value in this deck, since you'd rather use the other bodies to make rank 4s and rank 6s and stuff. This card, however, is insane in the deck. I feel like this card is mandatory. You're missing out on a lot if you don't have this card with this deck. Because unfortunately, Dino is supposed to be a budget deck, but it's not at all, because Crown Xeno is expensive, this card's expensive. But I mean, the deck's playable without it, but I feel like this card is just one of the best cards in the game right now, and this deck can use it pretty well. So if you can get your hands on one, play it, absolutely. Nightmare Unicorn, it's good for link climbing, if you play access code especially. If you don't play access code, maybe you can cut it, because it doesn't come up that much besides when you just need that extra send. But I like having it in the extra deck if I have the space, but like I said, space is getting tight, so this might not make the cut anymore, but it is still a good card. Access code, I feel like you have to play this. I think just being able to pop stuff in certain boards where there's just shit you want to pop, it's just nice to have. And then if you do make this with the Unicorn, that's 5,300 plus Conductor is 8k, so that can definitely come up. Appaloosa. This used to be with the G Golems for going first, so it doesn't come up for that really anymore. If you do play the Ashkatos combo, I think you do need to be on a Link 4, because you have a ton of Link material, so this is one that's recommended for that, or the Unchained Abomination. Both of these are not bad to go into with that combo line, but if you're not playing the Ashatos stuff, I don't think you need to be on either one of these. Then this is probably played with scraps, but like I said, we don't play scraps around here, so these cards, like I said, just the Ashatos combo, you can have one of these in. If not, these are not necessary to play. But yeah, that's about it. I think I kind of touched on every relevant card. that's not like a main engine piece. If I missed anything, like I said, comment down below and I'll answer it. There's a good chance I missed something because there's a lot of cards here, and I kind of just grabbed everything I could see when I went through my stuff. So yeah, that's about it. So another long one. It's even longer than the last one, but hopefully y'all enjoyed. If you made it to the end, appreciate it, and peace.